Monkey D. Dragon and the Revolutionary Army are making their big move. I just can't believe that after like 26 years of One Piece, I finally get to say this. Yes, we got a little bit of a taste of it with the Reverie, but now after reading chapter 1149 and seeing that someone is in fact assaulting Marijoa and it's on fire, I'm pretty confident in saying that Dragon's big plan is now in motion. And as a result, we might get to see the origins of his plan and how even the Fleet Admiral Akainu plays a massive part in his story. But what exactly is Dragon doing here? Why is he doing it? And most importantly, what will happen now that he's laying siege to the Holy Land itself? And so I thought it would be really fun to sit down with you and chat about exactly that today, because I'm very confident that Dragon's big move will have some unforeseen consequences for the entire world and Luffy. Like Emu being revealed to everyone, the death of a very particular character, and even crazier things that will make Dragon's son, Monkey D. Luffy, have one heck of a plot twist in the final saga. But I shouldn't get too far ahead of myself here. How am I so confident in the first place that Dragon is assaulting Marijoa right now? I mean, technically it could be anyone, right? Maybe Blackbeard is laying waste up there. We do know that Lafitte, for instance, has been keeping very close tabs on the revolutionaries and revealed some of their strategies. Maybe it was Blackbeard who got ahead of Dragon and is now trying to take the Holy Land by force himself. And I could even explain why Katarina Devon wanted Saturn's appearance and copied it on Egghead Island. I mean, this all could make sense too. However, there are some really obvious reasons why it's not Blackbeard and like just Dragon and the revolutionaries. Now, there definitely is a chance, but I still think he's got a much different role to play in all of this that we'll also talk about later. Dragon is just a clear culprit, and I believe it's him for two main reasons. One is that this dude's entire role in the story is just to do, well, exactly what's happening right now. But more importantly, the second reason is that he told us that he would do exactly that. Because in case you forgot, he very confidently stated in chapter 1083 here that if the world government mobilizes the Holy Knights, that's where the real fight begins for them as well. Which, for one, sounds like the plot of any fantasy RPG like World of Warcraft or Diablo, and I do think that's pretty cool, but also it's what is happening on Elbaf right now. Simply put, the reason that I'm so confident that it's Dragon assaulting the Holy Land right now is because Summers, Killingham, Gunko, and Shamrock have finally moved and are making very heavy advances to secure the Giants for the world government army. And now coincidentally, while some of the Holy Knights are out and away, Marijoa is on fire and being actively assaulted. So much so that Emu had to call back Shamrock to defend them and is now trying to get everyone back to Pangaea Castle ASAP. Which I gotta say, by the way, Dragon, must mean that you're one heck of a threat to make Emu stress like this. And I gotta say, that's a little bit of a disservice to him, because while I do love and support the memes about Dragon just staring east and pretty much just letting everything happen around him, like without doing anything, he kind of deserves a little bit of slander at this point for all of that. But when you actually take a real step back and look at the crazy damage that he has done to the Celestial Dragons, considering all the circumstances, he has been making some big money moves all along already. It's just now it's actually getting real. For instance, we do know from chapter 1126 that Dragon's been making strides cutting off the food supplies directly up in the Holy Land by blockading the ocean around it. And in One Piece, this is a very viable and smart strategy, but in our world, it actually breaks the Geneva Conventions. Classic Dragon, breaking human rights accords to make his war crimes hit a little bit harder and more quickly. And if you're not sure what that exactly means, basically what's happening is that he's been attacking the supply gondolas at Redport here, which is a facility that lifts up boats full of essentials to the Holy Land for the Celestial Dragons. By the way, this is also the very same chapter that sows the seeds of doubt about Blackbeard being the person assaulting right now, seeing as Lafitte was already on top of some plan that Blackbeard had in response to the revolutionaries doing their thing. After the Egghead Island arc, we got a very quick check-in with what else was happening in the world around us, and this was a pretty big slept-on moment in my opinion, because for some reason Blackbeard wants to know what Dragon's moves are when they're happening and is planning something around that, which kind of makes you wonder what that could be. Now let's park that thought for a second and get back to it later, because first, cutting off supply chains isn't all that Dragon's doing here. He's helping revolutionaries across the world, and he's already made a full-scale assault on the Holy Land before to rescue Kuma and free many of the slaves. We also know that the Celestial Dragons are restless, annoyed, and frustrated at the lack of food and supplies over the last few weeks and months, blaming it on the admirals and poor Akainu. Speaking of which, kind of actually a very nice transition here into the next thing I want to talk about, which is what is actually going to happen now that the revolutionary dragon's fangs are piercing deep into the hide of the celestial dragons. This full-on dragon versus dragon battle is going to be absolutely insane, and it's because 3 possible figures are going to get into real action for the first time. We could finally see the epic battle of Monkey D. Dragon and Fleet Admiral Akainu, something by the way that has been framed ever since Marineford. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, while everyone and their mother was freaking out about Ace being the son of Goldie Roger, Sakazuki was absolutely foaming at the mouth, ranting about Luffy being revealed as being Dragon's son. He was like, who cares about Roger? Like, this dude, I hate this man. Let's just say that Clifford the Big Red Dog over here has some serious beef with Dragon somehow, and them clashing in the Holy Land could reveal to us finally what their history is. I kinda get it though, it seems weird on the surface. I mean, you'd be right to ask, why would Akainu, the fleet admiral out of all people, mobilize here? Isn't that, you know, the other admiral's job first? And while that question is pretty fair, I think the answer is fairly simple. During Egghead Island, it was shown to us by Oda that Sakazuki does mobilize for powerful threats in the Holy Lands. Remember, Kuma appeared and was on an absolute rampage, and Magma Man stepped up to the plate to defeat the fraud allegations, or at least try to. So with Dragon, the #1 enemy of the world government, being in Marijoa right now, you know that Akainu wouldn't hesitate to get on things himself. Especially when you also consider how bored he is with all the paperwork that he's been doing ever since the time skip. And if that happens, we'll finally be able to settle the debate of who is stronger, the biggest fraud of today, Akainu, or the biggest fraud in history, Monkey D. Dragon. Huh? Gojo, Sukuna, move over. This is a battle years in the making, if not long, decades in the making. Dragon, the man who hasn't really made a move so far in, you know, like over 1,100 chapters, and Akainu, the man who hasn't really made a move since the time skip happened and just has been, you know, sitting at his desk and looking angry. Sakazuki might not get his chance though, because 2 other powerful warriors of justice are very conveniently back at home waiting to feed their own fraud allegations. And for all we know, Akainu might be relegated to killing another one of Luffy's brothers, Sabo, while the Holy Knights actually take care of the real business. I'm talking about Figaland Shamrock and his big daddy boy, Figaland Garling, who could both make a stand against Dragon here. I mean, I'd actually love to see both of them battle against him, and maybe either Sabo or Ivankov. I mean, it could be a really fun 2v2 match, and personally, I prefer to be Ivankov so that Ivankov can get a few good punches in against Garling as payback for, you know, everything that happened on God Valley. Because remember, it was the 6 slave hunting games in God Valley that were the real catalyst for Ivankov becoming and co-founding the Revolutionary Army to begin with Kuma and Dragon. And so it'd just be a nice little full circle character moment for them if they got to hunt down Garling on his home turf this time around. Now let's actually stick with this for a moment, because God Valley is a super interesting point of discussion in this context, because I think it's somehow even more important than we thought it already was. And I just love to talk about it because every time it appears in the story, some absolutely crazy and hot lore is revealed, and now I think we're on the cusp of learning the exact moment that Dragon decided to become a freedom fighter, which is, you know, what the revolutionaries were before you officially founded them. You see, I've been talking with you about what Dragon's been doing so far and how he's doing it, but I haven't really broken down the why. Why, you know, go toe-to-toe with the strongest organization in the world. So let's focus on that for a second, as it will really help, I think, explain the massive implications and consequences for the future of this Marijoa attack. Let's start with the fact that Dragon was not always a freedom fighter and then revolutionary. At one point, he was just Dragon, the son of Garp, a son of a vice admiral, and arguably the most important one, because Garp eventually then became the hero of the Marines, and Dragon at some point we know was following in his father's footsteps, chasing some form of justice. Now, One Piece fans have been theorizing for many years that Dragon's hatred of the world government stemmed from him previously being part of it, and that has now finally been confirmed very recently. In case you missed it, because it was an offhand statement really in one panel, we did get confirmation here that Dragon was some shape or form of Marine during the Garp and Kuzan flashback. And when you bust out the One Piece timeline, don't worry, I've got mine handy. Let me just roll it out real quick. Editors, can you give me a hand here? Okay. Oh, good one. The timeline, please. Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, if we go right here to the God Valley incident, we can see that it took place 38 years ago in the story. And if we go here, 17 years before that, Dragon is born, meaning that at the ripe age of 17, it is highly likely that Dragon was a young Marine already during the events of God Valley. But not only that, I do think it's very likely that he was a key player fighting the pirates due to his family's natural fighting power. I mean, let's face it, Luffy and Garp were both shown to be exceptional fighters at a really young age, and the legends surrounding Dragon do at least imply that he is at least just as strong, if not stronger. It also would line up really well with Luffy, who started his big journey at the very same age. Now, this man has likely been very proficient in punching and high-level haki use from when he was very young, and everyone who meets Luffy and knows Dragon isn't at all surprised when they say Luffy bust out some Conqueror's haki or fight against really strong enemies, so I think it's pretty safe to assume that if Dragon was at God Valley, he may even have been throwing hands with the likes of a young Kaido or some of the other Rocks pirates. Now, we do also know that Dragon was already a freedom fighter when Ohara was burned down and he discovered that Clover was dead. So at that point, he just went from freedom fighters to full-on revolutionary, but what we don't know is what originally pushed him to become a freedom fighter before that. And to me at least, God Valley would be a very easy answer. I mean, it would explain why he thinks that the Celestial Dragons particularly are a stain on the world, as he'd see what they were doing firsthand. He'd also have a really good reason to know about the Holy Knights, as he would have fought alongside them during that battle, or I mean, I guess protect them. But I do think it goes even further than just that, because he could have actually met Ivankov during that very same battle and then helped them stay safe until Kuma launched all the slaves away. Possibly even giving Dragon an idea of the incredible power that Kuma had once eating his fruit. And again, since Kuma and Ivankov met at that island, would it not just make so much sense if all three of them met there? I, for one, wouldn't be too surprised if Garp being hailed as hero after the events of that battle were what really pushed Dragon over the edge. I mean, seeing his father, a warrior of justice that he used to respect, someone who shared the same distaste for the Celestial Dragons, just fold to that, just accept this false title and fame that came with it. Ooh, I think that might do it for me as well if I were in his shoes. Watching your personal hero benefit from the vile actions of the worst people in the world would ruin my entire perspective on the system too. Also, no shade against Garp, he made his choice. I still love him as a character and he's super awesome, but I could see why Dragon took it really the wrong way. And that all might get revealed during Dragon's assault on the Holy Land right now, and the things that could come from this fight are, simply put, absolutely mind-bending. I mean, think about it. We could finally see Dragon's devil fruit, something that a ton of people assumed was some form of wind or storm logia, or, you know, legendary devil fruit. This would make a lot of sense, as we do know several high-level Marines are given logia fruits, like Smoker and all of the admirals almost. However, I do want to point out that one of my team members is really hell-bent on him having the mythical human fruit model Susanoo, a mythical zone fruit based on the storm god in Japanese mythology. Which, you know, I could see with all of the mythical fruits going around, and it would also be super cool and make sense considering that all the top tier threats in the series right now just seem to be some sort of god or mythical zone fruit user. Though I do think that the most widely accepted modern theory is that his fruit is the mythical snake fruit model Quetzalcoatl, a wise man who came to bring civilization after a great flood, who is sometimes depicted as a giant winged serpent deity in South America. And this would line up pretty nicely with the monkey family's ties to South America too, and would definitely be a super sick kaiju style transformation that lines up against the Gorosei's massive forms too, and really justify why this man is also named Dragon. We could also finally get an explanation on his really cool looking tattoo, his relationship with Akainu, you know, gonna become admirals together and friends, that would be nice, and honestly just a general Dragon flashback that we really deserve, I think, Oda. I'd really love to see what this dude has been silently pondering for like the last 26 years, and I do have to admit, there is a good chance that things get way worse as a result of Dragon's chess game here though. Just to give you an example, Oda loves to use pre-timeskip events to frame things in the post-timeskip era, things like Skypiea foreshadowing Gear 5, Little Garden teasing all of the Elbaf lore, and now I think we could get a much worse parallel because Ace was captured by Blackbeard, setting off the Summit War, and I think the same could potentially happen to Sabo Sabo. Yes, I know a lot of people don't like that idea, but let's be real, it is absolutely on the table and wouldn't be super surprising if Oda pulled it. I mean, he's Luffy's other brother, he also has the Flame fruit, and is a massive threat to the world government as nations around the entire world are rallying behind the second in command, the Flame Emperor Sabo. So if Sabo is also laying waste to the Holy Land, which kind of seems likely since Imu said the Holy Land is in a sea of flames at the end of chapter 1149, Dragon might be flying a little bit too close to the sun at this point, especially since Imu is now in motion as well, and I think his actions might set up an even greater event and the rise of the most fearsome pirate in the world. I mean, sure, he's taking the right opportunity at this point to strike while Imu is at his weakest, but if another outside force who's been watching every single step that they've been doing were to swoop in and, I don't know, save the day by kidnapping Sabo, well then things would get really interesting, wouldn't they? Just like things get very interesting over on the Ohara Patreon, it's a real blast over there with early chapter reviews and exclusive bonus content just for you there. Go check it out. I think you might want to join, and if you do, maybe one day we can hold our own revolution against God someday. I like that a lot. Also, if you just want to join for free, we do have a free weekly One Piece newsletter with any news surrounding the live action, the anime, the manga, anything that Oda's up to, so you can just have that for free. With that being said, and the bills being paid, and big shout out to all the Patreons, let's get back to it. And I'll really stop playing coy here. I think it's pretty likely that the final stage of Blackbeard's big grand plan can start right now that the revolutionaries have been attacking Marijoa. I've already mentioned that Lafitte, one of the sneakiest of the Titanic captains, has been in charge of following the revolutionary army, but goes way deeper than just that. Blackbeard has had a very odd fascination and relationship with the revolutionary army for quite the time. In fact, Blackbeard and his crew have been framed directly against Dragon in the past before, and I'm starting to think that the reason we got for this wasn't the entire truth from Oda. Because during the Zou arc, it was revealed that Burgess stowed away on a revolutionary army ship escaping Dressrosa, a ship that then led him to the revolutionaries' base on the island of Baltigo. Now, it was framed that the Blackbeard pirates laid siege to Baltigo to rescue Burgess and get the weapons that the revolutionaries stole there, but I do think it might be even deeper than just that. I feel like Burgess may have very intentionally hopped on a revolutionary army ship, since the revolutionaries are the one big missing piece to Blackbeard's big plan. And to understand that, I want to remind you that it was revealed that Blackbeard was trying to kidnap Kobe and then Garp in an effort to leverage the world government, forcing them to recognize him as an official king of the island of Hachinosu, thus getting him a direct seat at the Reverie and access to Marijoa. But he's been facing some issues because Kobe is a member of SWORD, and it appears that Garp is probably as well, or at least will not be rescued for using a bunch of SWORD members to lead an unsanctioned assault on Hachinosu. They're all off the books, and this means that Blackbeard needs now another surefire way of gaining the favor of the Celestial Dragons and Emu and becoming one of them. Now, I think we all know that he has an even bigger plan in mind, maybe usurping Emu or getting the treasure of Marijoa, but for now he probably wants their favor, and in my eyes, the best way to do that would be for Blackbeard to step in and defend Emu and the Holy Land from the revolutionary army. That could be why he's been keeping tabs on them since the Reverie, and it could also be the ulterior motive behind attacking Baltigo. I mean, Teach would need to make sure that the revolutionaries' timeline matched up perfectly with his, and if they were strong and almost ready to assault the Holy Land after Dressrosa, Blackbeard might not have been in a position to defend them just yet, so he attacked Baltigo, picking up Burgess, but also delaying Dragon's assault. Just long enough to bolster his power even more and be truly ready to swoop in and intercept the attack. Alright, but then what about Sabo? Well, I do think it just makes the most sense for Teach to bring Emu someone of major interest to them, the Flame Emperor, who actually escaped Emu and saw Emu as a sign of good faith. It also, of course, would parallel the kidnapping of Ace and give Luffy yet another reason to inevitably clash with Blackbeard, and I really think this is where things are going because Emu also has mad beef with Sabo. As you know, only a handful of people are actually allowed to know about Emu in general, and Sabo is probably one of the top 5 people who definitely shouldn't. He tried to save Cobra and then saw the evil ruler himself, and Emu would probably reward Blackbeard quite handsomely for bringing them Sabo. But with that being said, ultimately, I do think that Dragon, despite his best efforts, will somehow end up lose this battle. Though he might reveal Emu to the rest of the world in the progress, drastically changing the way the final saga will be unfolding. Especially now that Emu themselves are making their own moves, possessing Gunko and burning Elbaf to the ground. And if you want to know what it means that Emu has now appeared on Elbaf, you should really check out this video here where I break down everything about Emu and their destructive power and what's gonna happen next. Because if a dragon attack in the Holy Land makes waves, Emu possessing Gunko could make tsunamis. With that, thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much to all of our beautiful and smart and handsome Patreon members that you can see right here. What amazing people, you could be one of them.